Welcome to
Girl Chat.
Okay, so renting in London is an entire massive, thing in itself, especially when you come from a foreign country. So let's chat about our experiences of renting in the Big Smoke. I've had experience renting from a student and then renting from as like an adult, and it's quite different.
How's
Yeah,
it
so
different?
how did it work as like renting as a student? Because we had a similar. We also, when Andy was a student, it was tricky. How did you find it?
Yeah, so it was quite tricky because I self-taped for my drama school. So I self-taped and then I flew over to audition in the recalls. And I only had a very short window in which to see houses and whatnot. And I don't think I even viewed a house before officially moving in. I had friends on Facebook with some of my course mates, and they said, "Would you be interested in forming a house together?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So it kind of happened organically, but we did have to go through a letting agent. Our school had a couple letting agents that you could choose, and it kind of just it did happen organically that I was just put into a group of two other girls, Jamie and Sam, who are still my very good friends, and we became roommates. But one thing that really shocked me was that in London, it's very, very uncommon to have a seating area or a lounge, because what landlords will do is they will try and convert any space they can into another bedroom in order to earn more money. So we were really fortunate to actually have a living room, which was unheard of.
It's called sweating. They sweat the property, so they sweat it for
Uh-huh.
Sweating?
yeah, sweating.
Ah.
I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that either. Fun fact of the session.
I think also one of like Ains, I don't know how it was with you guys with students, but one of the other really tricky things is if you don't have like a credit rating in the UK and you don't have a guarantor who will stand surety for you, they want 6 months rent up front. And
Exactly.
that is so like, I don't even know how you get around that. We had to like, find these distant family friends, like, please, we promise, and that's tricky in its own right. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else had that
You
experience.
have to find UK-based
Yes.
family, friends, or anyone that said that they would like sign for you in case you couldn't
Yeah.
pay rent.
And also those UK friends who sign for you have to own property in the UK, like in order to stand guarantor. So even a guarantor has its own set of, like they have to meet a certain criteria. So it's pretty tricky.
We had a little bit of a different experience because we came over with Craig's. So my boyfriend Craig, his just for all the people watching. We came over with his company. So if you can, I move over with a big corporate because it makes the entire process much simpler. So they gave us someone, like a property person, for 3 days to take us around London and show us the different areas, see which areas we liked. We saw a bunch of places that they had marked out based on a preference, So I said I wanted big windows, I wanted lots of light, because I know that a lot of places in London, like there are some really shitty apartments for like
Yes,
a
there are.
big rental like every month. And a lot of them are very dark and just dingy. So you have to be like very aware of like, you are going to come across some places that are just not what you imagined. And also often the pictures on the sites, I've had this so many times, don't look anything like the actual space when you walk in, because they've used wide angle lenses, or they've designed, the bedding and everything looks so lovely in the photos, and then you walk in and you're like, whoa, this place is tiny, doesn't look anything like the pictures, and you've wasted your time basically. So but yeah, we had help, and it was amazing because I don't know if we could have moved over on our own, to be honest. But there were a lot of fees involved in renting that have now been changed because there was a tenancy fee ban that came into place, I think it was in 2019, and we moved over in 2018. So we didn't get that, which means we had to pay like an extra 350 quid. And I don't know if it was per person, for documentation, for the agent, for signing fees. Like there was just so much more added onto your first few months of rent that you don't expect. And that kind of throws you for a loop if you're not prepared. So be prepared for those kind of things. Yeah.
And let's shine a little bit of light onto our fellow friends that might be thinking of moving to London. I mean, London is a huge city. It's made up of zones. So almost if you can think of a circle, the smallest being zone 1, and then it goes zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, and zone 6. Now, zone 1 will be your central, your city. So that's Big Ben, the London Eye, all the tourist attractions where most offices are based, especially in finance. Obviously, being in zone 1 is going to be incredibly pricey and expensive. So a lot of people will have the mentality to try and move out further in order to have a cheaper rental. And then it also gives them the luxury of perhaps having a garden, or their council tax might not be as steep as it would be in zone 1. So that's something also that's important to figure out, where will your office be if you're going to be going into work, and how long the commute is, because it's not unnatural in London to have a 1-hour commute each way. In fact, that's pretty normal.
Yeah, that is normal. And just remember, council tax, everyone has to pay council tax. So
unless you're a student.
Unless you're a student. So that's a given in terms of that's added on to your the cost you have to accumulate in terms of rent, just like your electricity and your water, British Gas, that kind of thing. But it does change depending on what area you're in. So I'm in Southwest London. I'm specifically in Putney, which is where a lot of South Africans tend to live. Also Wimbledon, Earlsfield, Wandsworth, and we're in something called the Wandsworth Borough, which means just so happens that our council tax is the lowest. So so we pay a lot lower than almost half, I think, of what other boroughs pay. I'm not sure why, but the Wandsworth Borough is the lowest council tax. So
that's great. Chev, you've just recently moved into a place. Tell us about that and how you found it.
Okay, so again, I didn't actually know, good fact, that students don't have to pay council tax. Obviously, I wasn't a student yet, but I found that fascinating because London's rules blow my mind sometimes. So I started living with my boyfriend, and then we wanted to be adults and move into our own place. So we were looking for, this is during COVID, we were looking for a 2-bedroom place because we were very aware that 1 bedroom would probably be an office. And again, like Kendall, I had, being very fussy, like I am, I had very specific criteria that the place needed to meet. So again, natural light was a huge one for me. So a big selling point for me in this house was 2 skylights. And an outdoor area because we wanted to get a 4-legged friend. So that was quite important. So we had our certain boxes that we wanted to tick, which obviously makes it easier because estate agents are like, they don't want to waste their time with you either. So when you have the box, and obviously all the boxes are ideal, and you have to manage your expectations of what you're going to find, obviously within your budget. But when you go there, and I'm quite direct, and Ainsley pointed it out to me that it was quite strange and very un-English, that I phoned the estate agents directly, and I was like, this is what I'm looking for, I want to book the place today. Ainsley's like, no, the English mail. So my advice would be to actually just phone and like have your list, discuss it with whoever you're renting, discuss it with your like partner or whatever, and have that list. And go in and then find the place. But also going back to council tax, we moved from zone 2 to zone 3, and our council tax has dropped £90 now, even though it's technically still Lambeth Council, which I didn't know, and I found quite interesting as well. So again, just choosing location and costs involved, that plays a big factor really.
Interesting. And I think another thing is when you're looking at renting, there's 2 ways to go about it. You can either do it through an agent, a letting agent, or you can do it privately. I've actually never rented, besides when I was a student, through a letting agent. I've found my houses all privately. What I did is I went onto a website called spareroom.co.uk, which is one of the biggest, rental sites. And I put in my criteria and what I was looking for. And then I embarked on something called the housemate interview, which is so intense. It's almost like a job interview where you go from house to house. You probably book in I had 6 or 7 viewings a day. And I would go and I would sit on the couch of my prospective flatmates and sell myself to them and say, this is who I am, this is what I do for fun, these are my hobbies, and basically have 6 other humans judge me and see whether they wanted me as a roommate or not. And when they say no to you, it does take your pride away a bit, but when you actually find that dream house and you find your prospective housemates, it's really exciting. So that can also be a benefit in that you don't have the agent fees that you'd need to pay because you deal directly with the landlord. And if I'm not mistaken, Jess, I think you deal directly with your landlord.
We hadn't figured out the guarantor thing yet. And the agents are really not too keen to help you out if you don't have that credit rating, or at least that was our experience. So we ended up finding out about open rent. And it's kind of similar to what Ains was saying about spare room. It's dealing with the landlord directly. And that is another great platform to use. And it also cuts out the estate agent fees. So that's what you want. And another really interesting thing that I didn't know, well, I don't think it's like this in South Africa, but again, none of us would know because we haven't rented in South Africa, but you can negotiate your rent. And I did not know that was a thing. So I was just under the impression, South Africa, if the rent is this, that's what it is. But in England, you can negotiate your rent. And I thought that was awesome. So don't forget, you can negotiate your rent, knock a couple £100 off the price when you put your offer in. So that's what we did, and it worked. So
just to counter yours there, because obviously I've said we had a really strict criteria. So when we walked into this flat, and even actually before, so we were actually viewing a house on the same road that we're in now. And then I said, is there anything else in the area? And he said, yes, there's this one that's just come on. So obviously the estate agent, so I've dealt directly with the estate agent. He was like, I'm pretty sure you'll like this one. And he emailed me, always get the pictures before, because we once went to a suggested viewing and we're like, what is this? So get the pictures before. But he basically sent us over this house, and this was right before Christmas. And again, COVID, so the offices, the landlord, estate agent offices were shutting down completely. But then we walked into this house and we really liked it. And we had done enough research to know that our budget was realistic for the house that we were getting and whatever. So we didn't negotiate we went in straight because we were so scared about losing the house. Which is another factor. London moves way quicker than anything in Durban. It's it will be gone. Literally, you'll see it, and if someone likes it, they'll put in an offer straight away. So that's just speed is imperative. If you really like the place and you can afford it, and you're not willing to take the risk, then again, my advice would be don't drop a few hundred. I would say stay out.
Can we talk a little bit about, I don't know if you guys are happy to share, but in terms of how much is rent into like a 2-bed, 1-bed? I know Shave, you said you're in a 2-bed. I'm in a 2-bed. We're all in different areas. Jess, are you in a house?
Yeah. So in a house, 4-bedroom, but it's kind of like 2-bedroom, 2-study. Renting with my parents, and yeah, so that obviously pushes up your council tax. The bigger the place, the higher the council tax. And we're in Greenwich, which is kind of zone 2, zone 3. And yeah.
Well, I know for us, we're in Putney, we're in quite a modern apartment. It's got a balcony. The 2 beds are actually really decent size. It's a beautiful space. And I know that most of the places in Putney on average, Craig and I were looking, are about 1.7 for a 2-bed or up a month, which is quite a lot for rent. But you're living in a beautiful area. You've got the Thames on your doorstep. It's very safe. You got lots of cute like coffee shops, and you've got a lovely high street. But it is one of those things that's like, do you want to pay more for your rent and have the lifestyle, you know? So that is definitely something to take into account. And when we saw this place, we were like, you know, we're willing to sacrifice paying more, and you know, because we had a different budget in mind in order to have the space that we really wanted. And we're so thankful in a way. Obviously it's been very difficult, but we're so thankful because we've spent so much time at home, and this place is beautiful and light, and like we can open the door, we get fresh air in, and I mean, Ains has been to our space and it's really lovely. So from that point of view, we're blessed. But then again, it's also quite expensive. So, you know, it's a sacrifice.
Also, another thing that's quite interesting to bear in mind with what you're saying, Kens, is like where you live versus your commute. Because often, like the further out you live, the more money you're going to spend on commuting. So it's also quite a useful exercise to weigh up what you'd spend on money commuting. And then like for us, it made sense to live closer, because what we would have been the difference of living further out and the money we'd spend on commuting, it made sense just to put that into our rent and be closer. So that's another useful thing. I mean, okay, we're all working from home now, it's COVID, but it is quite a useful thing to bear in mind.
And in your area, Jess, what is kind of the average, if you know, rental cost for a 4-bedroom house? You don't have to tell us, you know, exactly what but just a average.
So roughly I'd say 4-bedroom house, you're looking at about 2.1, 2.2, maybe going up to 2.5-ish if it's like really modern. Ours is like super old, so we're closer to the kind of 2 bracket. And then your council tax on top of that is like about 230, 225 actually pounds a month. And then, that's kind of our range. But I know like kind of 1-bedrooms in Greenwich are about £1,500 a month for your 1-bedroom because it's on the river. So,
And you share?
Yeah, so our like rough budget was, again, from like, obviously we found some places that were like 3 bedrooms that were like 1.3 or something, but our rough budget was from like what ideally you want to pay small amounts, but also then realistically you don't want to live in the whorehouse, the Hoxton whorehouse. So our budget was like from 1.4, and then like the most comfortable that we were like willing to go up to was the 1.8 kind of thing. And then we did kind of reach our peak with our house, but we love it. So for us, and also like we were moving in during COVID, so we were very aware of like the space and liking the space. So that was ours. And again, we've got 2 really big bedrooms. And we had built-in cupboards, which is another big thing because a lot of
that's amazing. That's so rare, actually.
Don't have built-ins, and I really love clothes, and I do that a lot. So for me, having a place to house my clothes was super important. And then again, just open plan kitchens. So we have a bit of new and old, because again, lots of the houses in London, for me, it blows my mind. I'm like, these houses are so old, and like at some stage they're going to need to convert them and like kind of tear them down. But there's such a thing about like a listing of and keeping the front of the house the same. So again, something to bear in mind, that you'll probably 90% of the houses are older, and you'll probably be living in a converted kind of house.
And your heating bill will be higher if you live in a single glazed property.
And heat is very important. It's actually kind of cool to go and look at a house in winter to make sure that it's going to be warm. Because being cold is horrible. I hate it.
So for me, the very first house that I rented when I was a student, my rent was £400 per month, which is almost unheard of.
Oh my goodness.
And then when I started working and I moved into what I term the Hoxton Hall House, I lived in Hoxton, which is in Shoreditch, which is a very trendy, up and coming. I mean, it's a very trendy neighborhood. So in that zone, rent was quite pricey, but I did manage to find an absolute gem of a house, and my rent was £667 per month, and that included all my bills, electricity and Wi-Fi, as well as council tax, which is, again, it's almost unheard of. But the caveat to that is that I had 5 housemates, so there were 6 of us in total. When we had our partners over, which was almost every night, it would be 12 of us in one house. We did have mushrooms growing out the carpet in the lounge. We had a moldy bathroom, and when I moved in, there was vomit behind my headboard. So I was willing to clean it all, because in terms of what my salary was and my rental, that's pretty much all I could afford starting out working in London. But I think it's also really important to gauge how much you'll be spending on rent versus how much you have at the end of the month to basically live comfortably, and what you're willing to sacrifice. Because especially coming from somewhere like South Africa, where, you know, if you're in the middle class, you would have a beautiful house normally with built-in wardrobes and cupboards and space and a garden. And that's just something that London doesn't offer because of the way the city is built. So you have to kind of basically give and take. I no longer live in the Hoxton Hall House. I now live in my own house with my now husband, which is fantastic.
Legal signing.
So our home it's a 3-bedroom. We are in central London. We don't rent, which is fantastic. We do own this home. But when we did go traveling, we did rent our house out to tenants. And that, I think, it was about £3,000 per month, including rental and estate agent fees and management company fees. So, I mean, it's all different across the board, depending on, you know, what kind of home you have and where it's situated.
Yeah, I think one thing to remember in London is that rent takes up most of your salary. I think everyone can say that. It's like in South Africa, I think you know, renting to kind of your salary that you earn, I think you can have a lot of savings or have more free flowing cash to spend on other things, whereas here it's like rent does take up most of your salary. So it is a very big decision, and definitely something you want to think about when looking at a space, because it's the reality. It's just how it is.
And whether you can afford a home to live in with just you as a couple, or if you may need to have roommates, and that's something that can be quite shocking to people coming from South Africa, especially married couples may have to move in and have housemates, just because it's unattainable to have your own home, basically, depending on, you know, what your circumstance is. And another thing that I was completely unaware of is that deposits are required, and deposits are usually about 1 or 2 months rental itself up front. Now, when I had just started to work, I definitely didn't have the money for a deposit and my first month of rent. So I actually ended up having to borrow £667 from my parents or something in order to say, I can move in next week, here's my deposit, and I'll pay my rent at the first of the month. I just wasn't aware that a deposit was needed. I just think I was naive. And then another thing was the fact that bills are more expensive in winter because, of course, you have to use your heating. I think a good thing to also remember is, obviously, when you're in London, it depends on what house you move into. I'm now talking when I was single and I lived in a flat share. Whether you have a cleaner, whether you can afford that or not, we chose as a flat share not to have a cleaner. And we had a roster of who would clean what common area on what day. Nobody actually cleaned. It was all me and my other housemate. But when I, went into different households, I could see people would have like rotas on the fridge, who clean what area and whatnot. So that's another thing to discuss, because that's an extra bill. Is, are we going to have a cleaner? If so, are they going to come in weekly, monthly? What does that look like?
I'm the cleaner.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
me too.
We're all part of
We're all
cleaners.
If you are looking for a fantastic cleaner, hire us for.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I would say one last quick fire tip from each of us about renting in London. Go, Jess.
Oh.
I've got one, and that's testing water pressure, because you can get really shitty water pressure. So when you go in, be scrutinize and literally go in and turn on the taps, and like not just the tap, turn on the shower. That would be my tip. Because I mean, shampoo in the hair, and also your hair changing from South Africa to here. Wow, I went through some weird hair phases.
The lime scale on the water.
Take photos when you move in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Take photos when you move in.
And get an inventory of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, proof of everything. If you are looking, the South African in London group on Facebook is amazing. And it's such a good space to, maybe if you're looking for a house share, it's a really good space to ask around in there. If you're looking for a particular area that you want to stay in, but you don't know much about it, or need some tips or advice for anything, it's a brilliant group. And yeah, I think any renting questions that maybe we haven't answered here, it's just a really good group to be a part of. So I would say that.
So I'm going to say something very controversial, which I think a lot of South Africans are going to disagree with. But if you are planning to immigrate and to integrate yourself into a new culture and into a new lifestyle and make new friends, as a South African, I would avoid Southwest London, purely because it is infiltrated with fellow South Africans, and you will find yourself congregating to those you know. So I would say branch out, try East London, North London, West London. You'd be so surprised at what happens when you integrate with others, people that are not South African, although we are all South Africans. So
and we all live in very different areas, so
Exactly.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and we hope we're going to be a lot better at bringing you more videos a lot sooner, because we know there's been a little bit of a longer break here. But if you enjoyed watching today's video and maybe you learned something, then please will you subscribe to our channel and give us a like.
Let us know what you guys want to, what fun facts we can try and pull up, and if you guys have any stories that you want to share, like pop us a comment or whatever, and it would be cool to share listeners' stories as well.
Yeah, we might even get you on here.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Thanks everyone. This is
Thanks,
Expat Girl Chat.
Expat Girl Chat.
Awesome.